I arrived at my parents' house at 8 a.m., bags packed for our family trip. Only their dog was home. Then my phone rang. My name is Ronald. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a regional manager for McDonald's. I oversee 8 restaurants, 70 employees, and more operational metrics than you'd want to hear about over dinner. And yes, I'm fully aware of the irony of my name. Trust me, it has been explained to me many times, mostly by my own family. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me give you the context first. Because without it, this is just a strange story about a dog and a home renovation. With the context, it becomes something else. I grew up in a mid-sized city in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, where the fences were low and the opinions about other people's children were not. Our street had that specific atmosphere of places that were once cheerful and are now just familiar. The same bakery on the corner for 20 years. The same cracked sidewalk nobody fixed. The same families whose kids had been feuding since second grade. Standard apartment building, third floor, 2 balconies. One functional, one buried under things that were too good to throw out. There are 3 of us kids. I'm the oldest. In the middle is my sister Diana, 4 years younger. The youngest is my brother Alex, who is 27 and still lives with our parents. But it's temporary, has been for 5 years. Our father, Victor, is a retired engineer, a man of few words who communicates through nods and football commentary. Our mother, Ludmila, introduces herself by full name even to her own children when she's annoyed. That's a useful detail about her. Mom is passionate about healthy eating. That's the gentle version. More accurately, Mom runs a wellness blog with 17,000 followers, posts photos of green smoothies at 6 in the morning, and once threw out my yogurt from her refrigerator because sugar appeared 4th on the ingredient list. I had driven 2 hours to visit. That yogurt was my breakfast. Diana does yoga, veganism, and herself, in that order. She has a YouTube channel about conscious consumption and toxic foods. She also has a habit of saying, "I'm just looking out for you," before saying something that would not look great on a greeting card. When I was 26 and got a promotion to restaurant manager, she said, "Ronald McDonald, do you really think this is something to be proud of?" I laughed, not because it was funny. Alex is one of those people everything gets forgiven simply because they smile at the right frequency. He dropped out of university twice, borrowed money from our parents for a business idea involving reselling earphones from AliExpress, and this topic is still navigated around at dinner. When I was in my first year of college and asked for $50 for textbooks, Mom told me I needed to learn how to manage a budget. 3 moments I've never forgotten, even though each one individually sounds like nothing. Moment 1. I was 18 and had just been accepted to university. Quiet dinner at home. No cake. When Alex finally decided to try university a year later, there was a full celebration with relatives. Invited, he didn't get in. But there was a party. Moment 2. I was 24 and had just gotten my first serious position, shift manager. I called home. Mom said, "Have you thought about trying something else? You have a degree." Then she handed the phone to Dad, who said, "Good." That was the most extended praise I'd ever received from him. Moment 3. Last New Year's Eve, I arrived with gifts, wine, and dessert, and found the table set. 4 places. Not 5. 4. Mom explained she wasn't sure I was coming. I had confirmed in writing in the family group chat a week in advance. I sat down. They brought an extra chair. I spent the entire evening feeling like a guest who hadn't been invited, but whom it would be rude to turn away once he was already standing in the doorway. I told myself, families are complicated. I told myself I was an adult who didn't need constant validation. I was wrong. These days, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood with a decent grocery store and a park where I run in the mornings. Yes, I run. I eat vegetables. I take care of myself, not because Mom wants me to, but because I feel better. This detail matters because my family decided that working at McDonald's meant I subsisted exclusively on Big Macs and was scheduled to die at 35. In reality, I know the nutritional breakdown of every item on our menu better than most self-taught wellness bloggers. My apartment is small, but the first thing I bought for it was a floor-to-ceiling bookshelf, just because I wanted one. It holds books, 2 plants, and a photo from my first marathon. No family members appear in that photo, not because they weren't invited, but because I didn't invite them. Some things are more pleasant without an audience asking why you're doing this. I have a cat named Colonel, gray, heavy, and possessed of the personality of a factory director who has been in back-to-back meetings since dawn. He greets me with the expression of someone who expects a full debrief. My closest friend is Dennis. He's a cook at a mid-range restaurant, loves jazz, and deeply resents being asked, "But what do you make at home?" He's one of those people you can call at 1 a.m. and say, "Something went wrong," and he won't ask for details. He'll just say, "Coming over," or "Talk to me." He encountered my family a few times at a distance, and once said, "Ron, they treat you like a distant relative they're politely tolerating at holidays." I told him he was exaggerating. I was wrong about that too. My supervisor is Sloan, Regional Operations Director. She wears the same gray blazer to every meeting and knows the performance numbers of every restaurant in the region better than some managers know their own menus. She once said after a brutal quarter, "Ronald, you're the only manager in this region who brings me solutions instead of problems. Recognize that in yourself." I saved that message. It's still in my phone. There's a moment when you understand that what you've been calling "that's just how things are" is actually a system. For me, it was Diana's birthday 2 years ago. Mom called and said they were celebrating in a small circle. I said, "Great, I'll come. I'll bring a cake." She paused, one of those pauses that does more explaining than words, and said, "Diana invited friends from her yoga studio, and they follow certain dietary guidelines, and it would be awkward if you brought, well, you understand." I said, "Mom, I'll bring a fruit tart." She said, "Maybe next time would be better." I didn't go. No one called that evening to ask where I was. The next day, Diana posted in the family chat, "Thank you all for a wonderful evening," with photos. In every photo, Mom, Dad, Alex, Diana's friends. No empty chair. No mention of an absence. I sat holding my phone thinking, if I simply didn't exist, there would be no visible difference between my presence and my absence. That didn't hurt. It just stated a fact, like reading a report that confirms a number you already suspected but hadn't written down yet. Here's the thing about being the reliable one in the family. You become infrastructure. Nobody thinks about infrastructure until something breaks. And I hadn't broken yet, so nobody had thought about me at all. I told myself it was fine. I kept going. I was wrong. Now, the trip. That trip. It started in February when I came across a Mediterranean cruise. 10 days, 5 ports, reasonably priced if you booked early. I thought, this is it. Finally, a way to spend real time together, not at a holiday table where someone forgets to set my place, but on neutral ground. Open water. Maybe they'd see me differently. I called Mom. She said, "The food on ships, I'm not sure what they serve." I said, "Modern cruise ships have vegan and vegetarian menus, and I would verify every detail." She said, "Talk to your father." Dad said, "If your mother agrees." In our family, this means yes. I booked the cabins, 4 of them, for Mom and Dad, for Diana, for Alex, and for me. I paid the deposit for everyone, because we'll sort it out later. I built the full itinerary. I found restaurants in every port with vegan options and sent the list to the family chat. I bought new luggage for Mom and Dad, drove it over personally. Mom said, "You shouldn't have spent the money," in the tone people use when they mean thank you, but don't quite get there. Departure. First Saturday of April. Meet at the family house at 8 in the morning, taxi to the station, train to the port, on to the ship. I sent the full plan to the chat. I sent reminders at 2 weeks out, 1 week out, and 3 days out. I received 0 responses. In our family, silence means yes. This I had learned to interpret as normal. I had learned to interpret a lot of things as normal that were not. I packed on Friday evening with a feeling I don't experience often, the specific calm of something finally about to go right. I parked outside the building at 7:58, got out with my suitcase, buzzed the intercom. Silence. Buzzed again. Silence. Used my spare key, the one Mom gave me, just in case. And I had never imagined what case she meant. The apartment was empty, clean, tidy, with Rex's food bowl on the kitchen floor. Rex was their golden retriever, 7 years old, sitting in the kitchen doorway, looking at me with the expression of someone who had been expecting a different person, but was prepared to work with this. On the refrigerator, a handwritten note: feed Rex twice a day. Bowl on the left. Leave the key under the mat when you go. Thank you. Thank you. Not even my name. I stood in the middle of my parents' kitchen, suitcase in hand, reading that note. I checked the family chat. First Saturday of April. Meet at 8. I had the right date. My phone rang at 8:14. Mom. Sweetheart, hello. We're already on the ship. It's absolutely beautiful. Diana found a yoga class on the upper deck. Your father is happy. Everything is so well organized. You'll feed Rex, won't you? There's a note on the fridge. Twice a day, don't forget the water. Oh, and the bathroom faucet has been dripping. Can you take a look? We'll be back in 14 days, kisses. In the background, Diana's voice. Ronald McDonald will bring you a souvenir from Barcelona. And laughter. Not cruel. Just the laughter of people having a good time who hadn't noticed anything was wrong. I said, all right, Mom, have a wonderful trip. I hung up. Rex walked over and pressed his nose against my hand. Well, I said to him, looks like it's just us. He wagged his tail once, decisively. I sat for 5 minutes, poured myself water. Pet Rex. Looked at my suitcase standing in the middle of someone else's kitchen, looking equally uncertain about where it had ended up. And then something shifted. Not an explosion, not a crack, just a quiet click, the way a light switch sounds in an otherwise silent room. I thought, fine, all right then. I made 3 very quiet phone calls. First, Dennis. Are you free the next 2 weekends? He said, depends on what for. I said, I need help with a project. I'll explain. He paused. I'm on my way. Second, an interior installation firm our company occasionally works with. I asked if they had availability for a small private job. They said yes. I said, it's going to be unusual, but interesting. Take down this address. Third, Olga in our marketing department who handles branded merchandise. I asked whether we had samples from the new decorative product line, the one developed for corporate offices and events. She said there was an entire storage room of it. I said, I need some for a personal project. Can I come today? Rex watched me make all 3 calls. When I finished, he pressed his nose against my hand again. You're wise to keep this between us, I told him. He lay down with the air of an accomplice who understood the arrangement completely. For 14 days, I lived in my parents' apartment. I took care of Rex properly, fed him twice a day, walked him morning and evening, threw a tennis ball until his tongue was out and he was visibly satisfied with life. Rex turned out to be better company than most people I know. He didn't ask where I worked. He didn't say, I'm just looking out for you, before criticizing my choices. He was simply glad when I arrived and slept near me in the evenings. I fixed the faucet too, 20 minutes and a new washer. And then I renovated the living room. I want to be precise. I broke nothing, damaged nothing, removed nothing. I simply redecorated, thoughtfully, with attention to detail, with access to corporate branding materials logged as pilot testing of new decorative solutions for franchise locations. The walls had been beige. That specific non-committal beige that happens when people want something neutral. I repainted them. 2 walls, bright yellow. 2 walls, red. Official McDonald's corporate colors, Pantone 123 and Pantone 485. 2 coats, clean edges, professional finish. On the main wall, a large vinyl Golden Arches decal, approximately 5 feet tall. It occupied nearly the entire wall from baseboard to ceiling, glossy, gold, and completely impossible to ignore or misinterpret. The curtains, red and yellow stripes. Dennis, who unexpectedly had basic sewing skills. My grandmother taught me, don't look at me like that, helped hang them. On the coffee table, official branded cups filled with decorative balls shaped like French fries, available in the corporate merchandise catalog. Quite cheerful objectively. On the bookshelf, where Mom's books on Ayurveda and detox programs normally lived, I carefully moved the books aside and arranged 17 Happy Meal toy figures in a neat row. They faced the room with complete seriousness, not mockingly, like a small committee. On the wall beside the TV, a framed print. Billions and billions served. Classic slogan, quality paper, gold frame. It looked exactly like a motivational poster for a very specific kind of person. On the living room door, welcome to McDonald's. We're glad you're here. The remote I wrapped in a branded McDonald's bag with a handwritten note. Enjoy your viewing. The rug, official corporate floor mat from our restaurant waiting areas. Red with yellow border. It fit the space as though measured for it. Rex observed the process from the doorway. By day 3, he had accepted the new aesthetic completely. He would walk in, lie on the corporate rug, and look entirely at home. More at home, honestly, than I ever had. Dennis stood in the finished room and was quiet for 20 seconds. Ron, he said, this is either genius or you need a therapist. Possibly both simultaneously. Both are on my list, I said. I took Rex to my apartment for the remaining days. Colonel received him with the expression of a senior executive informed the company was moving to open plan. They spent day 1 watching each other from opposite ends of the room. By day 2, they were asleep next to each other. I locked the apartment, left the key on the kitchen table beside a handwritten note, Rex is healthy, fed, and happy. The faucet is fixed. The living room has been updated. With love, Ronald. They came back 14 days later, Saturday, around 5. I knew from Dennis, who had happened to be driving through the neighborhood. He called at 5:23 and said only, they went inside. Then silence. I sat with Colonel and Rex and waited. At 5:31, Mom called. I let it ring twice. Ronald! Her voice had that specific register of someone attempting calm and not quite managing it. What is this? What specifically? I asked. In the living room. Is this McDonald's? A renovation, I said. You mentioned wanting to freshen up the interior. I never said that. I may have confused it with another conversation. I apologize. Ronald, the walls are yellow and red. There is a giant M on the entire wall. There are little toys from... Her voice climbed. Do you know what the door says? Welcome to McDonald's. This is our home. I know, I said. Your home. In the background, Diana's voice. Mom, I cannot go in there. And then my father. Quiet, unexpected. Diana, wait in the hallway. Ronald, Mom said. Quieter now. Somehow worse. I don't understand why you did this. I didn't understand a lot of things for a long time either, I said. Rex is with me. He's fine. Call when you're ready to come get him. I hung up. At 5:58, Dennis messaged. Man, they called the police. I replied, I know. At 6:15, an unknown number, a police officer, he explained the situation. I explained mine. I had a key. I'd been asked to look after the property. All changes were cosmetic. Nothing broken, nothing destroyed. Original furniture in place, walls repainted with quality paint. You repainted the apartment in McDonald's style, he said. Regional manager, I confirmed. It's my area of expertise. A pause. Then, I'm almost certain, he moved the phone away slightly. And in the background, something happened that could only be described as a person suppressing a laugh, with considerable professional effort. Technically, no crime was committed. You had lawful access, nothing was damaged, civil matter between family members. I'll convey that. Thank you, I said. My parents stood in their hallway, looking at the golden arches and yellow-red walls, and didn't walk in. Just stood there. Dennis texted, they're still in the hallway. Your dad is laughing. Quietly. But he is. I saved that message. My father called the next morning. Not Mom, Dad. This happened so rarely, I almost didn't recognize the number. My father and I had spoken on the phone. I estimated approximately 11 times in my adult life. Most of those calls had lasted under 3 minutes and involved logistics. This was different. Ronald, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. We shouldn't have left you behind. He stopped. My father doesn't pause to choose words. He either speaks or he doesn't. It was wrong. I didn't answer immediately. Also, he cleared his throat. That wall. The arch. The lines were straight. Good work. From Victor the engineer. This meant more than most apologies I have received from anyone. Thank you, Dad. How's Rex? Made friends with the cat. They sleep together. He made a short sound, something close to a laugh. Good. We were quiet another minute. Then, come Sunday, he hung up. I started seeing a therapist a week later. Dr. Adler, a woman with an abstract blue painting on the wall, and a thermos of coffee that appeared to have no bottom. The first session I spent laying out the timeline. She listened, took notes, and at the end asked one question. Why do you think you did it? The renovation. I thought about it. So they would finally see me. I said, not where I work. Me. She nodded. You spent years making yourself small enough not to be excluded. That didn't work, so you tried making yourself impossible to ignore. She set down her pen. Both are adaptations to a system that doesn't register you by default. The real question isn't how to make them see you, it's whether you want to keep playing inside that system at all. I was quiet. What if I don't? Then, she said, something else begins. Sloan found out about the personal project involving branded materials through the departmental records. She called me in Monday morning, set the paperwork on the desk, and looked at me over her reading glasses. Ronald, you repainted your parents' apartment in our corporate colors. Yes. And installed a 5-foot vinyl golden arches decal. Yes. And placed 17 Happy Meal figures on the bookshelf. 17, I confirmed. I counted. She was quiet for 10 seconds. Then she signed a document. I'm logging this as a field test of our residential decorative line for brand partners. Officially. She slid the paper across. But next time, let me know in advance. I could have helped with logistics. You're not angry? Ronald. She removed her glasses. I manage 18 restaurants and several hundred people. I have seen everything. A pause. But a regional manager conducting a branded renovation of his family home as a form of personal expression, that's a first. Honestly, it's very on brand for us. She smiled. Once. Briefly. I caught it. On Sunday, I went to my parents'. The living room was partially restored. Mom had taken the figures off the shelf, removed the branded cups, but the walls were still yellow and red. The golden arch had not moved. Mom stood beside it with the expression of someone still deciding how to feel. We sat down. Dad made tea. Diana arrived late and was quiet for 10 minutes. Personal record. Then Mom said, Ronald, we should have taken you. It was a mistake. I waited for the but Diana mentioned you were probably busy with work. And we thought, Mom, I said quietly. I organized this trip. I paid the deposit. I built the itinerary. I drove over new luggage for you and Dad. Silence. I know, she said. Nothing else, which was the most truthful thing she could have offered. Diana was looking at the gold arch. Then she turned to me. It looks completely ridiculous, she said. I know, I said, but I understand why you did it. She looked at the table. We don't always factor you in. I know that. Not an apology, but something. From Diana, something approximating honesty costs more than it costs most people. Dad sat quietly with his tea. Then, leave it another week so the neighbors don't ask questions. I brought Rex back that evening. He walked through the rooms, stopped in the living room, sniffed the corporate rug, and lay down on it. Home. I watched him settle in and thought about how dogs are, in many ways, better at this than people. He had no opinion about where I worked. He had no position on fast food. He just knew where he felt comfortable. And he lay down there. Colonel, back at my apartment, spent the following day walking to all the places Rex had slept and sniffing the air with the focused expression of a detective closing a case. I sat that evening looking at my bookshelf, the marathon photo, thinking about what Dr. Adler had said, about adapting to systems, about what begins when you stop. Dennis texted at 10. So? I replied, fine. He wrote, is that your fine or actual fine? I thought and wrote, somewhere between, closer to actual. He sent a thumbs up. Then, also, the 5-foot golden arch is an absolute masterpiece. I'm proud of you. I laughed. Out loud, alone in my apartment. That was good. The walls were repainted 3 weeks later. Mom chose something between beige and gray she called warm mist. I helped with the prep work because it's faster than explaining what I'm capable of. Dad and I took down the golden arch together. He held one edge, I held the other. As we peeled it from the wall, he said, "The lines were clean. Shame." "We have another one in storage," I said. "If you change your mind." He made that sound again, the almost laugh. The Happy Meal figures Mom returned to me in a bag, carefully wrapped. I brought them to the office and arranged them on my windowsill. All 17. They stand there now, facing the room with complete seriousness. My colleagues assume it's ironic corporate decor. I don't correct them. The next family trip, I'm not organizing it. Mom mentioned wanting to go to the mountains in August and asked if I could come. Not, can you find a hotel? She asked if I wanted to. I said, let's see. That's not forgiveness and not forgetting. It's a new distance, not the kind that holds a grudge, but the kind that knows where it stands. My name is Ronald. I'm 32, and I'm a regional manager for McDonald's. I organized a family cruise, was left behind to watch the dog, and renovated my parents' living room in full corporate branding, after which they called the police. The officer appeared to suppress a laugh with considerable professional effort. My father said the lines were straight. Rex lay down on the corporate rug and looked completely at home. I ran a marathon last spring, and there's a photo of it on my bookshelf. Nobody in my family knows about that one yet. Maybe someday I'll mention it, or maybe I'll just keep running. Colonel still sniffs the spots where Rex used to sleep. 17 Happy Meal figures watch me from the windowsill every morning. Dr. Adler says I'm making progress. I'm starting to believe her.